Good morning, MacLaren. My name is Miss Rorstrom, and today I'm going to be talking about a very special place and two very special people who perhaps help us to see the world in a different way. So the place is called Oxford University. So it's located in Oxford, England, not far away from London. It was founded in the year 1096. Yes, 1096. Over 1,000 years ago, there were already students at Oxford University. This is also an interesting place because it's composed of 39 separate colleges. And a lot of these colleges are separated by giant medieval walls with dreaming spires and cathedrals popping up. So that if you're looking at the city from an aerial view, all you see, it's laid out as kind of one very complicated medieval castle. And it already feels like a magical place. Sometimes you'll walk through an archway into a giant square with untouchable grass. Sometimes you'll walk through an archway into a little garden where there's a tree. Sometimes you'll walk into an archway only to discover more archways and winding passages. It's a fascinating, fascinating place. And it's not really a surprise that it's been an inspiration to so many authors like J.K. Rowling, J.R.R. Tolkien, T.S. Eliot was associated with Oxford, and two Lewises, Lewis Carroll and C.S. Lewis. So I got a chance to study abroad at Oxford, and while I was studying abroad, I often ate in this giant hall at one of the colleges called Christ Church. And this hall is surrounded by portraits of people associated with Christ Church, and you've got King Henry VIII staring at you and Queen Elizabeth. And it's a little bit intimidating as a student to sit in this giant hall with all these portraits staring at you. But it's also a very warm, friendly place, full of people talking about whatever they're studying, exchanging puns across the table, etc., etc. And another thing that helps warm up the place is these two giant fireplaces that are often filled with roaring fires in the wintertime. Lewis Carroll apparently also noticed these fireplaces because the contraption that holds the wood has two little heads sticking up out of it, and they were apparently the inspiration for Tweedledee and Tweedledum in Alice in Wonderland. He was apparently also inspired by something at the back of the room. So at the back of the room is the high table is what it's called, where the faculty and honored guests sit and eat. And they often enter through a door that's hidden unless you know it's there, as it kind of fits into the paneling. And the faculty often come up through it and, process across, sit down, and then the feast begins. Well, there was one faculty member that was apparently always late. He had a bit of a rotund figure and a white waistcoat, and because he came up out of this secret panel that was kind of like a hole, he was the inspiration for the rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. He was always late for a very important date. The other Lewis was perhaps inspired by another corner of Oxford. It's the kind of place that you don't notice unless someone else points it out to you. But once someone else points it out to you, you can't help but see it as magical. So this little place has a wooden door in it. And in the wooden door is carved the face of a lion. And not just any lion, but a very wild-looking lion that has a face you can't help staring at. Very lifelike face that looks like it's going to come to life at any moment. And above the door are two fawns carved out of wood and painted gold. The fawns like Mr. Tumnus. And just beyond the door is one singular lamppost with a fence and some sort of wood trees kind of coming out and crawling out of the top of it. And you can just imagine this place in a snowy evening with someone walking from the sort of high street with all the shops on it through into the heart of Oxford, carrying Christmas parcels and wearing a red scarf. And you can kind of see how it might have been an inspiration for one of the scenes in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But there's one other thing that really makes me wonder if Lewis was inspired by this corner. So behind the door is the university chapel. And back in Lewis's day, faculty members going to chapel would have taken off their academic robes, hung them up, and walked inside, which meant that on the way out of chapel, Lewis would have been walking through a sea of all of these robes, finding his own and opening the door into whatever greeted him on the other side. And Oxford is one of those places you walk through a door and you never quite know what's going to be on the other side. And it's the kind of place that makes you imagine that walking through any door might be some kind of magical experience. So why does this matter? Sure, it's fun trivia. It was fun as a student to sit and to look at the back of the hall and imagine a white rabbit coming up out of the hole, or to have pretend conversations with Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or a hope that maybe one day if I walked past that door, Aslan might just come to life out of that door. But, I mean, that wouldn't really happen, right? Well, there was something my professor said one day that made me think differently. He asked, well, sometimes you wonder, did these authors make everything up in their head, or did they just write down what they saw? And it made me wonder, sure, they had to have made something up. I mean, I don't walk by that corner and automatically think the Chronicles of Narnia, but it did make me wonder if they were seeing the world in a special way. Were they able to see sort of the enchantment or the magic that was already in all these little corners of Oxford, or that's already in the world in general? Is the world somehow enchanted? And are these authors able to see that enchantment in a way that the rest of us have a hard time seeing? Is it like the Narnia corner? Sure, I could have walked by it and not seen Narnia, but once someone told me that it was like Narnia, I couldn't not see it as Narnia. So are authors like that? Do they help us to see the world as enchantment in some way that we wouldn't see if they didn't tell us, but that we can't help unseeing once they tell us? Is it a good thing, or is it somehow true to imagine magical creatures coming up out of the woods, to look up at Pike's Peak and wonder if Pike's Peak has some sort of character to it, as if it's this figure in our lives that's kind of looking down and staring at us, if weather is like moods that it has? I don't know. Maybe there's nothing there. But maybe these authors are seeing something. Maybe they're seeing something and helping us to see the enchantment that's already there in the world. Something to think about. Have a good day, MacLaren.